Finally, an answer to the age-old question, which comes first, the chicken or the egg roll? Easy! Just eat whichever one's closest. The Sensation Salad and Filet Sandwich Meal are back at Zaxby's. Both feature our famous hand-breaded chicken, crispy wontons, Asian slaw, and citrus vinaigrette. And each comes with its very own egg roll for a limited time only at Zaxby's. Try them with fried pickles while supplies last.
From Tally to Cali,
it's time
to wake up.
Wake up, wake up.
Warchant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source.
And this is Wake Up Warchant, presented by Zaxby's.
Now here's Warchant.com's Aslan Hajavandi
and Corey Clark.
Wake up! What's up, everybody? It's Wake Up Warchant, proudly presented by Zaxby's. Indescribably good. But I describe it, twice a week about how much I like it. So it kind of is describably good.
Well, you don't do it justice, though.
Okay.
And you can't. That's the point, is you can't describe how good it is.
Right.
You just have to experience it. So go experience it, folks. It really is good. We wouldn't be fooling you. We wouldn't be pulling the wool over your eyes.
Well, dude, guess what, man? The sensation is back. So we've been doing this for over a year now. The sensation is back.
Texas is back, folks.
Oh, all right. Nice.
So free egg roll, or not free egg roll, but egg rolls included with your meal. If you get the sandwich or the salad. So do check it out. Our good friends at Zaxby's. Golly, if there's an MVP caller, I'll take you out to Zaxby's after a Florida State win. That's the only thing that would do it justice when Florida State hopefully plays a football game at some point this season.
Absolutely.
And gets a victory. We'll be doing most of the talking, myself, Aslan Hajavandi, and Corey Clark, the other guy. Apparently, the other day, I did a video with Michael Langston, and apparently I called myself Aslan Hodges, my former television moniker. I don't know what's up with that. It was a Saturday night, man. I was feeling a little loose.
Right, gotcha. Understood.
I wonder if we can talk about this commitment video that I recorded with Michael Langston. He broke down a commitment from a player. I should probably see if we can talk about that, if it's still going to be under wraps. But it's an offensive lineman, so there's that, if it has to be under wraps. So I won't give it all away. Maybe I'll text them at some point in the show to see if we can. But also, we'll have an interview. People like interviews. We sat down and spoke with Preston Jones. He's the head football coach at Perry High School in Perry, Arizona, birthplace of one Brock Purdy and his younger brother Chubba, Florida State Seminole, number 12 in your program, number 1 in your heart. Asked him a bunch of questions about Chubba, his skill set, what he thinks about his chances of maybe being a starting quarterback as a true freshman. And I think he gave us some pretty good, candid answers, Corey. He's a coach, and he spoke, but it wasn't coach speak.
No, it's good insight into Chubba, and the fact that he's probably known Chubba since the 7th grade, because he's been coaching his older brother. So yeah, I thought it was good insight into Chubba as a competitor, how he thinks Chubba will handle fighting for a job in college, what makes him such a good quarterback. That's all enlightening stuff. So even if you don't want to hear us talk, which would be crazy, stay tuned for the interview, because it's a good one.
All right. And this week should be giving us some clarity as I'm talking to Ira on the phone here, texting him. So this whole end of July thing, when we're going to know an answer in terms of like what the ACC wants to do, I think even to a lesser extent the SEC. Maybe Big 12 as well, this whole kind of artificial deadline of like the end of July, somewhat vague, but not all that vague because, we know what's going on. Wednesday, it's going to probably be the presidents from all the universities in the ACC having a little bit of a kumbaya teleconference, and we'll see if it's going to be the 10-1, that is 10 conference games plus 1, maybe 8 plus 2, or whatever they're going to do. It does sound like pod play, for whatever reason, sort of, as you and I started advocating on its behalf, Corey, was promptly taken off the board, it sounds like, as one of the leading options for the conference.
Oh, that's a bummer. And I'll be honest with you, I don't really care what the ACC's plan is as far as the schedule. I mean, I do, obviously, but I care about what their protocols are going to be for an injured list and how teams are going to proceed when they have infections. That's the only thing I really care about, because of the way it's set right now with 1 week, one test every week on a Wednesday is pointless. So hopefully the people that make these decisions will make the right one and figure out a better way to make sure that players don't infect other players.
I have a dumb question. I want to try to ask it and make it not sound as dumb as it might seem on the surface. These are the things you folks all hang on the edge of your seat for, and we appreciate you listening to this podcast. You've mentioned it a few times about kind of like this fear you have. I don't know, fear's over dramatic, but just this concern you have of them shutting it down. Like at some point, like the season gets played, but they end up shutting it down. Is there something about that you think is just like a worse case than like them pushing it to spring? Like is pushing it to spring a worse case, or what is it about the fact that they play some games and my whole thing is like if they try and they can't get it done, then they can't get it done, and I don't think 2021's in jeopardy. But is there something for you? Is there like an optics to it, or is it just going to be just like getting like one slice of your cake and then the rest of it taken away from you if they shut it down, that has you kind of concerned about that scenario?
I'd be okay if they. I mean, I wouldn't be okay with it, but if they play 3 or 4 games, then have to take a break. Okay. I mean, we can all live with that. We understand it's got to be fluid. I just worry about like Wimbledon just canceling itself 3 months out. I don't want college football to get itself into a corner where they can't adjust or make adjustments for when teams get outbreaks. And I'm talking about outbreaks of 7 to 10 kids. I'm not talking about 60, because obviously you're not playing a game then. But that's what I wonder is what they're going to do. How long does it, right now you said that if somebody tests positive, they're out for 10 days. But if somebody's been in contact with somebody that's tested positive, they're out for 14. Correct. Stuff like that just makes no sense. And there's got to be some critical thought. Hopefully there's going to be some critical thought with these people, and they're going to be able to adjust to, okay, there's 6 kids on this one team that tested positive. We know that's going to happen, so don't panic. Don't say, oh no, we've got to shut it down. Understand that that's what's going to happen, and go from there. I'm just worried that like if Clemson has an outbreak of 9 players, the 3 days before their opener, is that they're just going to say, the president's just going to say we're not playing? It's too risky. That's what I wonder. And that's what I hope doesn't happen. But I can understand it from an optics point of view. But like when I saw this on Twitter when Juan Soto from the Nationals tested positive, I saw multiple people on Twitter saying, "Oh, they just got to shut it down." It's like, what? Well, number one, he didn't get it playing baseball. Yeah, we understand that he didn't get it playing baseball, and also, it's not like you go and play baseball and you're at risk. But then you leave the park and you go into this safe cocoon in this bubble where nobody's getting it. Look around the country. People are getting it everywhere. There's no guarantee that when you say, okay, they can't do this. Juan Soto, he doesn't have to play baseball anymore. He doesn't have to risk his life to play baseball anymore. Now he's safe. No, he just got it without playing baseball. We're up to getting close to 5 million people in this country that have tested positive. None of them play football. I mean, you know what I mean? None of them got it playing football. Right. So, again, it's a long rant.
Seriously, I'm all about, we're trying to get away from these things, Corey.
Sorry, man. I'm all about it. Just that bothered me, the whole reaction to Soto, because we know it's going to happen. And it sucks that it's a big-time player, and he's fun to watch, but that's just the reality of 2020, and that's the reality of sports in 2020. College is a little different. We all get that. But that's what I want to know is how they're going to attack not attack, that's certainly not the right word, how they're going to deal with outbreaks, how they're going to test, how often they're going to test, what's the policy to get back on the field. I want to know all that because right now what the NCAA proposed, that's nonsense. That doesn't do anything. It's got to be multiple tests a week, and if it's not, then you almost can't play.
Well, I was watching HBO Real Sports, and they did a segment on college sports and the return of football. Before that, they had probably the three most, highest visibility journalists in their respected sports. I guess Tom Verducci for Major League Baseball, David Aldridge for NBA, and then Peter King was talking about the NFL, and Bryant Gumbel was leading the conversation. And he was asking all of them, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your confidence that they're going to be able to finish out your season? Verducci said like a 5, just because he thinks that they're going to be traveling from ballpark to ballpark. There might be an issue there. David Aldridge said 8 because the NBA's got the bubble. And then Peter King said a 4 because, and this is to your whole thing about how are they going to handle situations. And for whatever reason, this guy's become a polarizing figure in our country. But Peter King was talking about, he spoke to Dr. Anthony Fauci, who told him that in football, like if you get a scenario where a team has 4 positives on one team, you have to shut that team down for a few weeks probably. That's what Fauci was relaying to Peter King. And now to your point about, we keep talking about positives, but we never talk about where they're actually getting it from, which is a fair point. On the segment they did about the college players, I think right now with the numbers that are out there in terms of the overall number of positive tests in this, or positive cases in this country, 2% are comprised of 18 to 23-year-olds, which are your college range demographic. But in terms of the amount of football players that have been tested, there's something like it's 8%. So like these college athletes have 4 times higher exposure to testing positive for this than your general college population. Again, I just don't know how that all is going to work out. I think part of it too, man, and they had Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, on, and he didn't look good on it at all. It was very uncomfortable. He didn't really respond well or show much poise. But he said, he talked about this, and I think this is probably where we're going to end up going, at least in terms of messaging, is the shared responsibility is the word he used, the buzzword, like the shared responsibility we all have of wearing a mask and et cetera, et cetera. And basically, like these players are going to have to kind of police themselves and keep themselves out of situations like going to clubs and bars. But I just don't know how, again, feasible that is. But it's where we are.
Well, again, that's why I want to know.
Yeah.
That's the scheduling, the start date, the conference opponents, is Notre Dame in or out? I just, none of that. I mean, it's cool to have that in the background, but it's in the background until we know what the testing is going to be and what the protocol is going to be when somebody tests positive. Right. Because you can't, if you're going to shut down a college football team because 4 kids test positive, there's no reason to even pick up a football right now. Because look around, it's going to happen. It's just a statistical almost certainty that at least a few, not a few, maybe all of the schools in the conference are going to have 4 or 5 kids that test positive starting in like late August. That seems like it would be absurd to think otherwise. So you have to adjust for that. And that's what I hope they do, is make adjustments for it. Because if that's too much, if 4 or 5 players tested positive out of 100 is too much, then what are we doing? You could have canceled it back in June. You could have canceled. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that's why I hope that the powers that be make it adjust and understand what's going to happen and be okay. The optics are going to be bad no matter how you do it. Like I just said, there were dummies on Twitter saying the MLB should shut down because 1 guy tested positive. So wait till 6 players on a college football team test positive. Now, meanwhile, they didn't get it on the football field most likely. They got it being 20-year-old kids. And they're going to be 20-year-olds wherever they go. If you shut down the program for a year, there's still going to be 20-year-olds that go and do 20-year-old things and subject themselves to getting it. So it's not like, okay, shut down football, shut down sports. That's not going to make. I don't see how that makes anybody safer. I'm not saying I'm all for just pushing ahead. 50. It doesn't matter. If you got 22 guys left, they can play. I'm not saying that. That's just going to be the talking points. I'm telling you, a month from now, that's going to be what these presidents and these ADs are going to have to understand, is they are going to be arrows being shot at them, telling them how unsafe they're being for these college athletes because they're playing football. And they either can take it or they can't, but it's coming. So anyway, I'm off my rant now. Off my rant. Let's talk about something else.
So what are we doing with a 10+1? So we're going to play 11 games, but we're going to keep it in conference. That way we're not having to ask Samford or Savannah State or, Mercer to try to field a healthy football team with the protocols that we're using because they're not nearly as flush with cash as the Power 5. So 12 games, 12 is just the poison pill. We can't do 12 games.
I don't think it's not the number of games though, right? It's the opponents.
Yeah.
And the travel and the regionality of it. I think that's more what they're looking to do. I think that, to me, what it sounds like to me is they want to come out with a 10+1. So when they have to cut it back to a 7+1, it's more, tolerable.
Flexibility or whatever.
Yeah, and it's like, we're trying to have 11 games, but we might have to cancel a few along the way, so we still give you an 8-game season. If you come out now and say you're having an 8-game season, and then a couple games get waxed, then you're like, okay, what are we even doing here? Yeah. So now if you come out with an 11-game schedule, at least it feels like a normal college football season, and it gives you some flexibility with those dates, I think.
So that +1, we want West Virginia, right?
No, we want Samford.
Okay.
That's an easy dub. That's a Norvell dub. He starts the year with Did you see? I thought I saw there was a school that just announced they were moving up their season opener.
Oklahoma.
Was it Oklahoma?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Oklahoma.
Okay. Just knock it out, huh? Just get it out of the way.
Well, something about if they were able to move that up, that then gives them like a 5-week. That, I guess, because where their bye falls, I guess they're probably not too different from Florida State in terms of their schedule layout. Something about they then have like 5 weeks to try to play 3 games, so that gives them flexibility if they have to bow out or quarantine or something like that.
All right, that's cool. Speaking of that Real Sports, who was the person that interviewed Sankey?
Through the power of the internet, I know that answer, Corey. I don't remember it off the dome. The only person I know, on Real Sports, is Bryant Gumbel, and then I guess Bernard Goldberg or whatever.
And Mary Carrillo. I think Mary Carrillo used to do stuff for him. Yeah.
David Scott. So
I saw the transcript of the interview. I didn't read. I saw a couple questions from the transcript. I didn't see the piece.
Right.
But one of the questions starts out with, okay, so you're flying all these kids back from their homes to your universities. And he's like, well, no, we're not. We're flying very few people back, if any. They're all driving because they live close. And it's that kind when you ask a question like that, it makes me almost, the whole thing is it discredits every other question you're going to ask because it's such awful planning for that kind of interview. What person thinks that these college football teams, like Florida State, is flying in the kids from Ocala? You got to get back. We're going to get on the flight from Ocala to Tallahassee. I mean, obviously they're driving back. And now that's semantics, but it's a really bad start to a critical question about how you're handling the athletes. And it makes Sankey have to look like he's being way too defensive, but he's correcting a really dumb assumption. So anyway, that was my problem with that question. And Sankey's point was right, like what I've been saying. It's like, look, you're acting like if they're not here on campus, that they're completely safe somewhere else without the testing, without the protocols, and it's just not true. It's not more unsafe for these kids to be on campus, the football players. I'm not talking about regular college students, for football players to be on campus with the access to testing and, everything else that goes with being a football player, than it would be if they're back in Ocala, living in a 2-bedroom house with, 3 or 4 other people, hanging out with their friends on weekends just like they do in college. I mean, it boggles the mind to think that would be more safe. But anyway, we don't know how football is going to react to this, as far as maybe when you do breathe on a defensive lineman, they get it. Who knows? They should all wear masks anyway, Aslan, or the new helmet that they're coming out with.
I think I saw a highlight of an Indians game. I think it wasn't a scrimmage. They're playing real baseball. And I think it was Francisco Lindor, whoever their shortstop is, just made an absolute fantastic play. And he had a mask on. Are there actual guys wearing masks during competition?
Yeah, the manager, I don't know if it's an edict from Major League Baseball that all the managers have to, but I haven't seen a manager without one.
Yeah.
And then, some of the players are like Acuna, I think, when he got on base, had a mask on to go running. He doesn't get on base much here early in the season, but when he did get on base, he had a mask to pull up. So I don't if you're standing in center field, I guess just to look cool. But you're really at no danger at all if you're standing in center field. You're 150 feet away from anyone. I guess if you collide with the right fielder and you happen to lay on him and just breathe straight into his mouth, or if you're coughing as you make the catch. So, anyway.
I've got 3 questions.
Do I sound like a guy that thinks this thing is a hoax? Because I promise, folks, I don't. I promise I know how serious it is. It's incredibly serious, and it's really sad what's happened in our country right now. This is awful. It's 1,000 people a day that are dying. We're up to well over 4 million cases, and it just doesn't seem like it's slowing down. I'm really scared about all of it. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Noted.
Okay, good.
So I have 3 questions. I was going to, do Monty Hall. Monty Hall, was he the guy that hosted Let's Make a Deal?
You got it, buddy. Good job.
Look at that. All right. I was going to make you pick one of them, but this one might be a little more relevant or whatever. So I think this is the question I was going to ask you on Friday or Thursday, and then it was like, man, we'd already gone an hour. Let's just get out of here. Since we're talking about scheduling, a 10+1, 8+2, I mean, if they do like an 8+2, I don't know, would you? I think I would take West Virginia, because my sort of question to you, Corey, is, look at the schedule, and if you're just going to go with Power 5 teams only, which is probably a good sort of parameter to work with, just looking at what Florida State's schedule is for 2020 as it is right now, how many of those Power 5 games do you think are more attainable for a win than West Virginia? This, again, it kind of goes to the staff is getting no breaks. I feel like Willie got some breaks. Getting Boise at home last year, I think, was a break. For this staff to have all this unrest around them and in terms of, what's going to go on with practice and everything, the West Virginia game, to me, just seems like that would have been a really favorable game to open up with. And who knows, maybe if they do an 8+2 it is. Can you look at that schedule and, I don't know, outside of what maybe Syracuse or NC State, that West Virginia game, their DC is on the outs now. You would be playing them on a neutral field, which I think is actually kind of a good thing. And I know there's not going to be fans no matter where you play, but even the home thing maybe gives you a false sense of security. But the fact that it is a neutral site, there is no opposing fan away game, disadvantage for you, because they're kind of dealing with the same thing as well. I just feel like this game really would have worked out to being a legitimate win for a first-year coach at this program. Looking at the schedule, how many games outside of West Virginia do you feel more confident about that are Power 5 teams on Florida State's schedule?
Yeah, I mean, I think they fall into the same category as the Syracuses, the Boston Colleges, the Wakes. I mean, I would have felt pretty confident with a Wake Forest game at home in front of, 59,000.
Yeah, that's right.
And they did. Yeah, that quarterback, the backup that Florida State lost to the other one. So you can't know. But I would have felt pretty confident about that. Just that you're playing at home in front of how many ever 1,000 fans would have been there. But yeah, I think they're in the same category. They shouldn't be a coin flip. But you should have, the Corey Football Index, the CFI that we're going with this year. I would give Florida State a 76% chance to. No, that's too high. A 68%. I almost went another notch up in the 60s. 68% chance to win that game. So yeah, but it's the same thing I'd give for Wake Forest and Syracuse and BC. I think it's mid to high 60s percentage chance to win that game. So yeah, that's kind of a bummer that if that one gets canceled.
I feel like there's a little bit of shine on it, though, because it is like a non-conference game. It's a Big 12 team. I know it's not Oklahoma, it's not Texas, it's not
but
Baylor.
it's West Virginia's done stuff. I mean, that's a real football school. I mean, they don't win national championships, but they've been in BCS bowls and they've had really good players, and people know where West Virginia is. I mean, that's a real program. That'd be a nice feather in the cap. More so, right? Because all the Florida State fans have beaten Syracuse and Boston College and Wake Forest. They've seen that for 30 years. Oh, yeah. The West Virginias, they've beaten them. I know they beat them a lot when they play them in bowls, but that's been 11 years since they played West Virginia. So yeah, it might resonate a little more. Just somebody outside of the conference.
You were there, right? You were in the Gator Bowl 2010?
I was, yeah.
Year.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Who was the quarterback? Pat White wasn't the quarterback for West Virginia, was he? They had Noel Devine though, right?
Was it not? No, Pat White would have been gone by then. Yeah, they did have Noel Devine. And they got out to like a 14-0 lead and were just running straight through. Oh, you know who it was? It was Geno Smith.
Oh, was it?
I think he was either a freshman or a sophomore.
I'm looking it up.
But yeah, he played in that game and was awful. Like they started throwing the ball for some reason, and that's how Florida State got back in the game.
That was a brutal game for the first, half or whatever. We were surrounded by West Virginia fans.
I think Greg Reed had a big kick return to start the second half, or he did something big to get them in position to score. And then EJ had a nice game, and Jermaine Thomas had a good game.
Yes, correct. I don't remember any of that. Look at you. Yeah, Geno Smith, 8 of 15. Then they had their backup in or whatever, Jarrett Brown. He went 1 of 4, and he threw a
That's
pick.
right. What did Noel Devine do?
Noel Devine, my goodness, 16 carries, 168 yards, and a touchdown.
Maybe give him more than 16 carries? Holy moly, they just stopped. They're like, that's enough. I feel like it was Bill Stewart, I think, was the head coach at West Virginia. And it's like he wanted Bobby to – it was almost as if he wanted Bobby to go out with a win. That's how it felt. It's like he told his team, look, for the first quarter and a half, we're going to play West Virginia football. We're gonna run all over them. We're going to dominate them just to show we can do it. And then after that, let's let them go out in the sunset. That's because otherwise it defies just any sanity at all that you would stop giving Noel Devine the ball.
Toshman Stevens, my guy Toshman Stevens, Crescent City had a tackle in that game.
Tosh 5-point, big Tosh.
Yeah. So did Bud Thacker. Look at that.
Bud, there you go.
There you go. That was a fun one. Also,
that was a good day. That was a good day.
Other than the rain, but then it cleared out, I think, by the late second half.
Yeah,
the tailgating was brutal. It was cold. It was cold rain in Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm.
Cold rain out there. So, yeah, we can talk about the recruit real quick. You can look up his stats and his rivals profile, or I'll just pull it up for you. Check out what his name is. Chemo Macanole.
Oh, all right.
I mean,
there's a Noel in there?
Can you think of like a better name for a offensive lineman? Oh, that's how Michael Langston pronounced it. It might be Macaniole. There's a Niole that played for the Saints, I think, offensive lineman. Anyhow, he's from Crestview. He's an offensive tackle. Probably, though, Michael Langston saying interior, 3-star, which whatever, take it for what it's worth. 6'4", 278. His film looked vicious, though. I was talking about it with Michael Langston. The video's up on our YouTube page as well. Like, it looks like Dante Lucas out there. He was baptizing people, knocking people around, like his size. It was good. I can't believe he's got 3 stars by his name with his tape. But there you go, man. They lost an offensive lineman on Friday. The kid from Ocala, Jake Slaughter, center most likely, ends up going to Florida. But they got this guy. And he might even be able to play tackle. Chemo Macaniole. I want to say Macaniole, but Langston says Nole. Potato. So that's good.
Yeah, that is good. That's encouraging. I mean, I don't know what else to say about the guy. If he's dominating folks, that's good. But again, you would hope that the 280-pound offensive recruit, the big-time college football recruit, is dominating high school linemen.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to hang out the dryer. That was just.
It's hard to get too excited unless you're landing the 5-star super-duper recruits that are like no-brainers. They're going to be good, but still, you can work with solid players, and he might end up being a great player.
I like it. His mom went to BYU, so.
Oh, all right.
There you go. For whatever that's worth. So the Noel's getting it done. Look for more on that over at warchant.com. Use the promo code warchant30. Also over on warchant.com. We're kind of is it position preview time? I mean, is it fair to say what you've been cooking up is position preview stuff? Running backs was the flavor du jour the other day, right?
Yep, went wide receivers first and then running backs because I wanted to do the 2 easiest ones and get them out of the way. It's going to be a lot harder to write with stats about offensive linemen. And I guess I thought maybe I'd just do one about the backfield and include the quarterbacks in it, but there's 4 quarterbacks, so there needs to be 4 things to know about the Florida State quarterback position, and it's a pretty important position. I didn't know if you knew that, but it is. So we got that going. We got that going for the next week or two, at least. However long it takes me to do it, Aslan. However long it takes me to get this done.
So if you were in Vegas, you would set it at Jay Sean Corbin, favorite to be the lead running back, or however we want to, whatever adjective we want to put on the front of that.
Yeah. I think he's the favorite. But again, our man, Kalen, he's got a shot. He's got a shot. Both those guys have a lot to prove. Neither one of them have done much of squat in college football. Corbin was a starting running back at A&M and got hurt, but still, he hasn't proven much at this level, and obviously Kalen hasn't either. And they're former big time recruits who we still think have a lot of talent untapped in there. So, yeah, I think that's a good thing that they have two unproven guys, really, veterans but unproven, and then a whole bunch of freshmen coming in that are going to challenge for playing time, which should make them compete even harder. Last year it was Cam and Kalen and nothing. I mean, not to disrespect Sheffield and Treshaun Ward, but Akers knew he was going to get the majority of the carries, and it's crazy. He got like 78% of the carries in the regular season from the running back position, and like whatever it was, 79% of the yards and 86% of the touchdowns. He was a one-man show. Well, that's not going to be the case this year. They're going to have the depth chart went from 2 scholarship running backs to at least 6.
No one's going to ask us this because everyone's going to want to know what's going on with the quarterbacks every single time they're out there. Which, by the way, again, we think August 7th when they begin traditional preseason camp, we'll hopefully be out there able to film practice and observe it and share said observations here on the show and throughout our verticals on warchant.com. Are we going to be judging a running back competition? Like, is this the first running back competition at Florida State since, I don't know, like 2003 with Leon and Lorenzo? Although, Leon played quite well. But everybody was so intrigued about Lorenzo because of his recruiting profile. I don't know, is this like 14 when it was like Dalvin and Carlos and Mario Pender? Like, was that a running back competition? There's such a thing anymore?
I don't remember it being like, okay, who's going to be the starter? Who's going to be the starter? I don't remember that with the 14 crew. I remember Jalen just destroying Carlos Williams at the one practice we got to see. But we thought it was going to be Pender was the breakout guy. Yeah. Like, it just in 2014, it was hard. We weren't as good as Dalvin was. Carlos was this untapped guy, this size, speed monster that was as fast as Kermit Whitfield, it looked like, and 225 pounds. And also you had Mario Pender, who, one of the assistants who recruited him, and I can't remember who it was, he told a story on signing day about Mario Pender when he went back to his wife, and he goes, I think I just saw the fastest high school player I've ever seen. And that was Mario Pender. And so you had all these guys that you're like, okay, you can't wait to see what these dudes do. But it wasn't like, okay, running back watch 2014, who's going to be the starter? Because you knew that Pender and Williams would both get carries. Dalvin, not so much. Dalvin, it wasn't until both those guys went down that Jimbo was like, oh, yeah, we should give it to this guy more. But, you remember like Chris Thompson and Jermaine Thomas and Ty Jones, like those all guys kind of rotated. Freeman and Wilder, those all guys. I don't think we'll be looking at it like, because it's just a different position. Like, I don't think either one of us expect one of these guys to average 26 carries a game. So Corbin might win the job. He might look a little better. Maybe Kalen does. But don't we expect them all to play? I'm more interested, honestly. I expect those two to play. I'm more interested in who's going to be the freshman that steps up, or the JUCO kid, the newcomer that steps up and gets reps with him.
I keep wanting to say LaDamian Webb, but isn't there like a guy that plays for the Ravens? He's Ladarius Webb. Yeah, LaDamian Webb. Yeah,
you got it. You're right.
From Alabama, went to
ran for like 3,400 yards one year in high school.
He played at Beauregard, which was a state champion, I think, in 5A in Alabama. So they're like a legit team. That's a kid that I don't know how he's flown under the radar to the aspect that he has, or to the the degree that he has. But I think that's one of the things that we might have, kind of thought inaccurately about what this staff is about in terms of maybe their ideas or how they like to divvy things up. I mean, looking at last season, Kenneth Gainwell, 231 carries. Second behind that was Patrick Taylor Jr. with 78. Although the receiver had more yards than Patrick Taylor. So, I mean...
Yeah, but then 2 years ago, I think he had two guys over 1,000 yards.
Probably when he had Tony Pollard and Darrell Henderson.
Yeah, so I think he's if he's got the horses, he'll go with them. But if he's got a guy that's appreciably better than everyone else, like any good coach, he'll ride that. We don't know yet if Corbin is appreciably better than Kalen, where he would need 75% of the carries like Cam Akers got. And I don't expect that to be the case. No offense to Jashawn Corbin. I just don't. I don't think Jimbo, if this kid was Cam Akers, I don't know that Jimbo would be like, oh, yeah, sure, you can bounce. I know you were hurt all year, but you can bounce. So I expect it to be a committee. And I'm really intrigued when you read the bios of these freshman guys. Douglas, Wren, I think will get some carries. Webb, obviously Toafili. We're going to go with Toafili, right? That's the first guy that he called when he got the job. So he's going to have an eye on him. And I think one of those guys, he owes nothing really to Corbin or Kalen. Like, it's not going to be like he's going to play a dude based on loyalty. Whoever's the best dude is going to play. And if one of these freshmen really step up, I don't think you're going to have to wait till like Game 7 or Game 8 for them to make an impact. I think it could be almost immediate if Norvell and Dillingham like what they see.
Patrick Taylor was the other who had 1,000 yards back in 2018. I misspoke. It was Tony Pollard, wasn't. Although Tony Pollard's been Zeke's backup in Dallas and done quite well. But yeah, 2018, Darrell Henderson, 1,900 yards. Patrick Taylor Jr., 1,100 yards. And
how are the carries divvied up?
Man, 214 for Henderson, 208 for Taylor.
Yeah, man. He had a real two-back committee there. I mean, that's about as even as you can get. That's a lot of carries for running backs too. That's what is that, like 35 a game attempts just for your running backs a game? That's pretty impressive.
Well, here's the thing too. This is I'm going through all my bullets. You mentioned Wren, and what about Toafili, and when did we get into this whole thing? I don't know if Jimbo didn't start it, but this kind of belief that you can have, all these weapons and everybody's going to get involved and everybody's going to be able to make an impact. I feel like Alabama and Clemson, man, they got their guys, and they roll with their guys. Like, I just don't know, like Ja'Kai Douglas seems like an intriguing prospect, but I don't know. I just don't know. Like, does he come in the third quarter against Georgia Tech and, he's fourth on the depth chart, third on the depth chart, fifth on the depth chart, but there's something they're going to cook up specifically for Ja'Kai Douglas or something specifically for Corey Wren. Jimbo did some things with Kermit, but the only thing I can remember that Kermit did well, besides the kick return, obviously, I think he scored on a jet sweep against Ole Miss in 16, but they brought him on the field specifically for that. But I don't know. I mean, it's fun to kind of get excited about all these players they have, but ultimately, I don't know. I miss 13, obviously, for so many different reasons. But, 13 had their personnel, and the personnel was the personnel. Like, there wasn't all these different sub-packages. It was like, hey, our three wide is going to be Kelvin, Rashad, and Kenny Shaw. That's what we're doing. And Jimbo, every freaking year, tried to have, an 8-man rotation before that and after. And I was like, man, just find 3 really good guys and just roll with them. So I'm not as intrigued by all these sort of options. I like what they have up top with Corbin and Laburn.
Yeah, but I do think that they're not going to run just 2 guys out there. I think they'll find, and obviously you don't know about injuries. So they got to have people ready. It's just good. The point is, it's good to have options. Last year there were none. You saw what they ran out for the bowl game. Again, no offense to my guys,
pretty well,
Sheffield and Ward. Yeah, they did. But I'm saying that they were non-scholarship running backs. That's all they had. There was no Anthony Grant. There was no Kalen. And Cam Akers had decided not to play. That won't be the problem now. They'll have bodies, and they might be talented bodies where, good coaches find ways, if they have a dude that's really good on swing passes, to get him the ball a couple times a game in that situation. If they think that's good for the team, I do think that's something that these guys will probably do well. And Jimbo ran 3 wide receivers. He didn't really have many other options that year, but they were 3 awesome guys at their jobs. You had 2, basically NFL guys, one of the best in school history, another guy that was a freak, and then Kenny Shaw was great that year too. What if they weren't those guys though? You don't just like the next year or 2015. It was Bobo, Kermit, and Rudolph.
Travis Rudolph, yeah.
Yeah, wasn't quite the same.
But my thing though is I think Laburn and Corbin will give you all you need to a certain degree.
Yeah. I wouldn't envision one of these guys unless they're great, right? Unless they come on and they're much better than their ratings were. They take it by storm. They're like a Warwick Dunn type, crushing it the first week or 2 weeks of camp. I'm not saying these guys are going to be Warwick Dunn, but if they turn heads right away, and you're going to be like, okay, we need to get him on the field. We're not going to redshirt that kid. He's going to be a part of our package. Like when Florida State started the 1993 season, again, understand, folks, that none of these guys are going to be Warrick Dunn. But Warrick Dunn was third on the depth chart. He was fourth, actually. Then Tiger McMillan got hurt. And it was Sean Jackson. It was Marquette Smith, who was just the USA Today Offensive Player of the Year. He was a huge recruit. And then Warrick Dunn was behind him. And then all of a sudden, they're like, wow, this guy's really good. He should get some carries. And by the middle of the season, he was one of the most important players on offense. That can happen. Don't know if it will. You can't expect it to, but it can happen. Man, I'm talking a lot.
No, it's fine. I think maybe retro. I don't know. I'm going to stick with what I did. I put Deontay Sheffield on my top 40. I think Deontay will be third.
Hey, man, he looked good in the bowl game. He really did.
Yeah. All right. You feel like you're talking too much, which is no such thing, Corey. We love hearing from you. But we'll turn over to our interview of the week, which I shouldn't say that because you all probably think that means we're going to have an interview every single week, which is not going to be the case. Not because I don't want to do, but just, we got different schedules. And, come on. Stop making my job
Got to play tennis.
Yeah. So without further ado, here's our interview with Chubba Purdy's head coach. And as always, stay connected to warchant.com, but stay connected to our podcast. There's more. Here we go. Preston Jones, head football coach of the Perry Pumas out of Arizona, joining us here on the show. And, Coach, thanks for your time. Crazy times for a football coach, and I can't imagine it's any easier when, I don't know, it's for the first time in 4 years you're not going to have a kid with the name Purdy tattooed on the back of his jersey playing quarterback for you. So,
no, it will be different because, it's been a long time since we haven't had a Purdy, and they've done so much for us, and they've been not just great football players, obviously, but just been awesome kids and great leaders on campus. And so it's going to be awkward not having them around, but we're also ready for the challenge, and we look forward to making a different name for ourselves.
I guess Chubba, with the last name Purdy, obviously, to a certain extent, I would assume probably kind of, grew up in the shadow of his brother Brock, who's now at Iowa State. Was there a moment in time, or was it just a kind of a gradual process for when you sort of realized that, obviously Chubba's his own man, but that Chubba could be a special player at the quarterback position as well?
His freshman year, our head freshman coach came to me and he told me, he thinks he's better than what Brock is. And he said, you're going to be surprised. I think he's going to be better than Brock. And I said, there's no way, and we kind of laughed about it. But as he progressed and kept getting bigger and faster and stronger, and it was really neat to see. He is a freak athletically, and the sky is the limit for that kid. And there's a big argument, I'm sure, at their dinner table as well as there is in our coach's office, and kids that have played with him and which one's better. They both have their strengths, but they are both extremely, extremely talented quarterbacks.
Preston, it's odd to have two brothers that are on the depth chart together. How did they handle that? How did Chubba handle being a backup to his brother? Obviously, his brother was very good, but he probably wanted to play. What was that like as a coach to deal with that?
It wasn't too hard. We're in we have a very big program, very big school, so it's very rare that a sophomore plays varsity. And talent-wise, Chubba probably was our backup quarterback Brock's senior year. But we're not going to have our backup quarterback as a sophomore be on the sidelines and not play. So he would play his JV games. He needed to make sure he worked on all those things like leadership and taking control of the game and practice efforts and being a leader on the practice field. And so we kept him with the JV team. And then on Friday nights, we'd bring him up. And if we had an opportunity, if the lead was such, we could put him in, without him preparing with us all week, we would do that. So, on paper, if something would have ever happened to Brock, we would have brought him up immediately. But we wanted to keep him with his group, keep him with that JV team so he could work on his everyday stuff and as part of being a leader on the team, things like that. But we knew he was special. But as a sophomore, it's very rare that a sophomore plays, let alone starts at that quarterback position in our school.
I had one more about him as a sophomore. As athletic freaky as he is, did you ever want to put him at another position on the varsity team just for a couple reps, or maybe you could play safety or receiver? Was that ever talked about?
A little bit, but not too much, because luckily we had some good kids, and we wanted to just make sure he kept developing and coming along as a quarterback. And so, yeah, we could have probably brought him up and played a safety or a receiver or something like that, but I think it probably would have hurt him more than helped him. And luckily we weren't in the need. If we were maybe a little smaller school, we would have done that, but we weren't. But, as far as him being the back, game one of his sophomore year, we put him in the game because we were about 3 touchdowns going in that fourth quarter, and he took one from about 75 yards out on his own against a really good football team, which was very impressive. And that's when we all kind of looked at each other like, this kid's the real deal. Game one, first time he's taken a snap on varsity, and look what he did,
Coach, there was a coach out here at Florida State not too long ago that won a lot of games and was kind of known for his penchant for, I guess, scouting out quarterbacks and identifying what made them sort of special. And for him, a lot of it was, like accuracy and decision-making. And I don't know how much of that stuff you can coach and groom, but where does sort of Chubba fall on that spectrum of quarterbacks that, you've seen not only on Friday nights, but maybe even at the next level in terms of those two sort of tangible things that make quarterbacks.
His accuracy is off the charts. It's very, very good. But the biggest thing that he has, and our quarterback coach, his name is Steve Axon. We were fortunate to have him working with us, and that was Troy Aikman's quarterback coach at UCLA and Tuiasosopo. And so this guy has been coaching at every Pac-12 school there was, and he got to coach Chubba for a couple years, and he used to come in and say he throws a better deep ball than anyone I've ever coached. And for a guy who's coached at UCLA, University of Washington, Stanford, University of Arizona, for him to come back and say that deep ball touch and the arm strength and the accuracy for Coach Axon to say something about that, like that about a kid, is very, very impressive. And then his decision-making skills, again, that was one of those reasons we didn't want him up on varsity with us. We were big repetition. And so as the reps go, his decision-making gets better and better and better.
What do you think about his, a thing that I've kind of valued a lot once I started following college football as a reporter is competitiveness. And I don't know if you can coach that in a kid. I think that's one of the things that maybe you're just born with. What kind of competitor is Chubba? I would imagine as a little brother of a very good quarterback, he kind of maybe got picked on a little bit as a kid by his older brother. Did that develop a pretty amazing competitive nature? What kind of competitive does he have?
He is extremely, extremely competitive. That's another one of his strong attributes. They say the ping pong battles they have at their house are sometimes more intense than anything they've ever seen. I mean, that's a competitive family. He's a competitive kid. I look back, I think game 4 or so, we're playing against the top 5 team in the state, and we went into quadruple overtime with him. And Chubba put our team on his shoulders, and his competitiveness. In overtime in Arizona in high school, you put the ball on the 10-yard line. Oh. And it kind of came down. It didn't matter what I called. Chubba was going to take that ball, and he was going to score. It wasn't going to anyone else's hands. If it was a pass play, he was going to scramble and score. If it was a run play, he was going to keep and score. He was not going to be denied. That's kind of competitive. He ended up with 10 touchdowns. He threw for 5 and ran for 5. He had all 10 of our touchdowns. And, I mean, it was one of those things that he wasn't going to be denied, and we weren't going to lose that game. If that, he's going to have the ball and he's going to score.
Coach, you mentioned that, your school with the size that it is, it's very rare for a kid that's going to be a sophomore to come play on the varsity level, especially at the quarterback position. But with, the proliferation of the 7-on-7 and just how well you folks are coaching kids at the high school level now, it seems like, freshmen have a legitimate shot to come on campuses and make a difference. I don't want you to make a prediction, but I kind of want to see if you can help us maybe make a prediction. Just would you assume, I don't know whether you've picked maybe Coach Dillingham or Coach Norvell's brain on it when you've talked about Chubba, but would you be surprised if Chubba somehow ends up winning the quarterback position at Florida State University as a true freshman?
I have no idea the returners, who they have, but just being the kid that he is, at some point it would not surprise me. We said that about Brock. I was concerned about Brock, his brother, when he went to Iowa State. We were hoping he wouldn't, because we obviously love that redshirt year to try to just adapt and get used to that speed and everything else in the atmosphere. You'd love to have a quarterback redshirt so you don't get thrown into the fire. We would love to see Chubba redshirt, but because of who he is and his competitiveness, he's not a kid that wants to sit on the bench, and he's not a kid that's going to be okay behind somebody else, And so it would not surprise me at all with his tools he has and his competitive nature to somehow find his way on there. And of course, me being more like I'm not the coach anymore. I'm just the fan, and what I want best for Chubba. I sure would love to see him redshirt to get that year of adapting to college. But it may be like his brother, may not happen. I think his brother went for about 7 games not doing it. Then next thing you know, he got thrown in there. So we'll see what happens. But it would not surprise me at all if he were to win the job.
Coach, I've been gassing up Chubba for like the last month now. So there's no turning back for me. So I'm throwing all my chips on that kid. So hopefully it pans out.
Yeah, I hope so. And it depends on Coach Norvell and how they're going to Dillingham and how they're going to run that offense and what they want their identity to be. But he's the guy that can do it all. So he can be a drop back guy. He can be a dual threat guy. He can kind of do it all.
Now, as good as he is, and obviously when you're a 4-star quarterback and you're setting all these records in Arizona and scoring 10 touchdowns in a game, he's not used to failure. But he has thrown interceptions. He has lost games. How does he handle that? How does he rebound from, I don't want to call it failure, but from disappointment?
He's a competitor, so he's extremely hard on himself. He's his worst critic. And he takes losses hard. He takes not playing well, takes it real hard. But luckily, he's one of those kids that he's got that personality that he's able to put it behind him and move on. He's not going to dwell on it. He did make mistakes. He always owned up to mistakes. But he's one of those kids, he'd be upset with himself, but he moves on to the next game, on to the next down, on to the next series, whatever that might be. But he's real good at that. But you can tell it eats him up inside to not play perfect, basically.
And we've seen a quarterback here where the starting quarterback here last year, when he had bad moments or bad games, he would seem to devolve. Do you think Chubba has it in him? And I know it's hard to answer for an 18-year-old kid that hasn't played a college snap, to get over it and to use it as fuel to get better.
I think he definitely has that potential. But again, that's me always saying I sure would love to see him redshirt, because he's never played
right.
in front of 80,000 people, so you don't ever know how someone's going to respond. It sure would be nice to have him be on the sideline in front of 80,000 people for a year and warm up in front of 80,000 people for a year to see what that is like, just to start adjusting to it, and having a spring football behind you and things like that. It would be awesome to have that, but like you said, that may not be in the hand he's dealt this year, and I'm confident in everything about him physically and mentally.
Well, I don't think he's going to have to worry about the 80,000 people at the games this year. But I wanted to ask you one last question about, he was committed to Louisville for a good long while. What did you like about Norvell and Dillingham, and why do you think they made such an instant impact on Chubba?
I don't know. He wanted to make his decision before the season, early. He wanted to get it out of the way, and that was a place he visited in the summer, and he really, really liked it. Really got along with their staff there at Louisville, and it was nothing Louisville had done wrong. It was just, I guess, more about timing. I know he's probably always been a Florida State fan as far as just football goes. Everyone's always been attracted to Florida State. And for them to get a new staff and reach out to him, I think that was probably made him feel pretty good, And then he had a quick, brief relationship with him, and they must have said some good things to him and really sold him on, because even his trip out there didn't go real smooth because he got sent out to Texas, then he had a layover, and the layover lasted late, so he didn't even get it. I don't think his full 48 hours there at Florida State. So
right.
that whatever they did really sold him on what they're doing as a program. So hats off to them, whatever they said and did.
Coach, watching his huddle tape, his last question for me, I saw a kid that seemed like he knew where the ball had to go, through on time, even when he was getting, pressured in the pocket, seemed to be able to avoid it and make the right throws. You see the 4-star ranking next to him, and you see all the stats that he's put up in his time over at Perry High School. And he's a 4-star, and that's a pretty good accomplishment. But, being here in the Southeast, where football is king, even at the high school level, do people maybe not have a full grasp or appreciation of the schemes that you guys run out west? It seems like if you're not 6'5" and go to Mater Dei in California, if you're west of the Mississippi, you're probably not going to be a 5-star quarterback. What do you think is the reputation of like Arizona high school football, and what would you say about the quality of competition that Chubba and Brock went up against week in and week out on Friday nights when they played ball for Perry?
I think that the level of competition we play at and the league we play at is, I would probably put it up against any. The 2 state championships we lost were at Chandler High School, and Chandler High School, got their quarterback hurt. Otherwise, they probably would have beat IMG a couple of years ago. They go against the top-ranked teams in the country. They'll play in a bowl game when the season's over against the Georgia state champs, beat the dog out of them. They play against the state champs from Florida. They beat the dog out of them. And so we play against some pretty good people and pretty talented. And the quarterbacks that have come out of our state here in the last handful of years I think speak for themselves, on some of these rosters. They hold their own against anybody in the country, in my opinion. And Chubba is as good or better than any of them that have come out, in my opinion.
Coach, I'm going to leave you with this. I'm sure some NBA basketball, there used to be this thing called the Ewing Theory. A New York Knicks fan came up with this, that basically whenever Patrick Ewing, who was their star player, was out of the lineup, they actually ended up playing better. And we find in sports that, people count out teams when they lose a star player. So even though you're Purdy-less, I still think that the ceiling is the roof for the Pumas this season.
I sure hope you're right.
Preston Jones, head football coach of the Perry Pumas, joining us here on Wake Up Warchant, presented by Zaxby's. Thanks so much for your time, Coach. Best of luck this season.
Thank you. Take care.
Warchant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. Warchant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WARCHANT30. That's WARCHANT30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WARCHANT30. Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.